Trump's pick of Rubio as America's top diplomat could reshape U.S. policy in Latin America. Well, I believe that. President-elect Donald Trump's pick of Senator Marco Rubio to become U.S. Secretary of State is likely to jolt Latin America after decades of neglect from Washington. Read, the decades of neglect we're referring to means we haven't been actively cooing their governments as often, and by jolt, he means antagonize. It opens just as badly as the header would suggest. Growing up in Miami among Cuban exiles who fled Fidel Castro's revolution. I really like this, by the way, because Marco Rubio's family left Batista's regime. He didn't flee Castro's regime, but he loves to lie, or at least to imply that he fled Castro because it feeds into the, communism ruined my life and I'm here to take revenge or whatever narrative. But his family didn't interact with Castro. Growing up amidst, plantation owners and slaveholders who were kicked out of Cuba by Fidel, Senator Marco Rubio developed a deep hatred of communism. That's great, that's great. Now, as Donald Trump's choice for America's top diplomat, he's set to bring that same ideological ammunition to reshaping U.S. policy in Latin America. It's again, like, as a journalist, how do you whitewash and launder a narrative as much as possible? As the first Latino Secretary of State, and it reads. Rubio is expected to devote considerable attention to what has been long been disparagingly referred to as Washington's backyard. The top Republican on the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence, longtime member of the Foreign Relations Committee, leverages his knowledge and unmatched political or personal relationships to drive U.S. policy in the region for years. Like what? Like what has he done? For decades, since the end of the Cold War, Latin America has faded from the U.S. foreign policy agenda, even as U.S. adversaries like Russia, Iran, and especially China have made deep inroads. If confirmed, the Florida Republican is likely to end the neglect. In what way? This would be like reading a story about Hitler's Germany, talking about how Hitler is now looking to revitalize and send a jolt through neighborhoods in Warsaw, long left neglected. Like, what do you mean? What are you going to do? I know what they're going to do. I read the news. Rubio's reputation as a national security hawk, so much for MAGA, so much for end the war, such and such. Embrace of Trump's plan for mass deportation of migrants, and a knack for polarizing rhetoric. Well, I can see somebody's got his eyes to the future when it comes to operating in the Trump regime. Journalism, likely to alienate even some U.S. allies in the region, unwilling to fall in line with the incoming president's America First foreign policy. This is AP News, by the way. This isn't Fox News. Typically, Latin America policy is left to junior officers, said Christopher Sabatini, a research fellow at Chatham House in London. But Rubio's reflexes are firmly focused on the region. He'll be paying attention, and the governments are going to have to be more cooperative in their larger relationship with the U.S. if they want to draw close. You know what more cooperative means in this case? It means accepting deported migrants. The reason they're talking like entirely in euphemisms here is because Rubio doesn't have any real plans for Latin America in any like meaningful diplomatic sense. What they're talking about is he wants these countries to accept migrants that we deport there, like Venezuela, for example. Do you think this rhetoric is actually because journalists are afraid? Well, no, I think a lot of it's also because they're right-wing hacks. I don't know what this guy's writing record is, but... Oh, wow. A Miami-based investigative reporter who focuses on Latin America. I wonder what small island nation your family heralds from. Whatever. His last name is Goodman, though. Breaking Bad reference? Rubio, through a Senate spokeswoman, declined to comment about his foreign policy goals. That's encouraging. We're writing this whole article like glazing what a mix-up he's going to be for Latin American foreign policy. Then the incoming Secretary of State is like, nah, I don't want to talk about it. What are your plans for Latin America? I don't want to talk about it. Don't worry about it. But his views on Latin America are well known and contrast sharply with the Biden administration's preference for multilateral diplomacy and dialogue with U.S. critics. Again, I love everything that's being left to implication. Like, his views on diplomacy with Latin America contradict Biden's, which are those of diplomacy and dialogue. So he wants war. Coercion and war is what you mean. That's the alternative that you're referring to here. Haven't you heard Trump is the peace president? Yeah, Marco Rubio, very well-known dove. Taking cues from his boss, Rubio's main focus in the region is likely to be Mexico. Oh, by the way, we're off to a great start with this administration. If I recall correctly, the president of Mexico called him a racist like yesterday. Not yesterday, a few days ago. Oh my God, they even mention it right here. The Mexican president responded to López Obrador by calling Rubio a racist. But no, this is older. Sorry, this wasn't recent. This is older. But yeah, off to a good start. Increased border security, mass deportation. Rubio has said little about Claudia Sheinbaum, who took office last month, but he was a fierce critic of her predecessor. Right, yeah. Despite the snub, the Mexican president was welcomed by Joe Biden to the White House 3 weeks later as a friend and partner. That won't happen under Rubio, said Sabatini. He keeps close tabs on who is following his policy preferences. Nice. Great start on the right with the incoming Secretary of State. Yeah, he's mainly going to focus on Latin America. Yeah, he's mainly going to focus in Mexico and Latin America. Oh no, he and the president of Mexico hate each other. Yeah, they're not going to get along at all. Great. Okay. What a time. What a time. 5D chess. I mean, it is literally true that Republicans have been boasting about their willingness to invade Mexico for a while now. Are we actually going to? Probably not. It'd be a little funny. I don't think we should. Seems like a bad idea for, like, every reason imaginable. There's no one in the U.S. Senate who comes close to having his affinity and depth of knowledge on Latin America, said Carlos Trujillo. Trujillo, yeah. Rubio's close friend and former U.S. ambassador to the Organization of American States. Hey, I've got, like, a question. I'm not an expert on journalism, but I have a question. Do you think that when we're talking about an incoming politician, it might be good to critically evaluate his policies and beliefs rather than a friend of his says he's great? Like, that's great journalism. Really? A friend of his says he's great? Among those eager to work with Rubio is Argentine President Javier Milei. Oh, I bet. Whose combative style, attacks on institutions, and transformation from TV personality to far-right leader have drawn comparisons to Trump. First fourth world nation. We're in a race with Argentina. Another ally is the dictator El Salvador's Nayib Bukele, whose crackdown on gang violence that once drove millions to Salvadoran migrants to the U.S. has drawn praise from Rubio. Are they allies? Because Donald Trump has been attacking Bukele multiple times over the past few months. He's been listing him. It's insane. Bukele has arrested more people per capita than any nation on earth, and Trump was still saying, yeah, he's opening up his prisons to send migrants up to us. Like, this is the most won't let people out of prisons guy on earth. And Trump was still like, well, his name is Bukele, so yeah, he's probably sending Hannibal Lecter up to us. They'll probably get along. Rubio hasn't hesitated to use his power to bully leftist leaders he sees as harming U.S. national security interests. Even democratically elected moderates have been targets. Earlier this year, he slammed Chilean President Gabriel Boric, a critic of Israel's actions in Gaza, for allegedly, i.e. unproven, i.e. false, providing safe haven for Hezbollah financiers, calling him, quote, one of the leading anti-Israel voices in Latin America. Based? It's Israel first, folks. That's the one common line for literally everyone that Trump has appointed to his cabinet. All of them are hardline Zionists. It's more consistent than literally any other ideological grouping. Pro-war, anti-war, like MAGA loyalist versus neocon, like the most consistent feature is Zionist. Another 20 trillion to Israel. Maybe Donald Trump is actually the Palestinians' greatest ally. He recognized that AIPAC's grip on America was too tight, so his strategy for denying Israel our military aid is to collapse our own economy, thereby leaving them out on their own. Yeah, it's 5D chess. They say the man can't play, but he can. But it is on Venezuela that Rubio has left his biggest mark. Wow. Was Rubio involved in the coup attempt on Venezuela? I haven't read up on that in a bit. Probably. We'll go with probably. Sure. Was he? Probably. Crushing oil sanctions, In 2019, at the height of Rubio's influence, the U.S. recognized National Assembly President Juan Guaido as the country's legitimate leader. I remember that. That was fun as hell. That was right when I began streaming. That was the very, very, very beginning. That was crazy. Wait, who and when? Oh yeah, you're young. You don't remember. With Trump's selection of another vocal Maduro critic, Rep. Michael Walls of Florida, as his national security advisor, Trujillo said the Venezuelan leader and his authoritarian allies in Cuba and Nicaragua should be worried. Why? Like, what is the implication here that America has been like going easy on Venezuela? I don't know. In reality, Marco Rubio's job is mostly probably going to be to bully these countries into accepting the refugees that we send their way. Because mass deportations, you can't just do them on your own, right? You can't just drop people off in a country and like leave them there. Yeah, just like whatever, like, oh, sorry, whoop, whoo, you know, like you're leaving a package at a door, like a baby in a you know, carriage or whatever. They need to accept the migrants. They need to accept the deportees. How are we going to get all these people back to Venezuela? Aren't there like over 500,000 people in this country who are undocumented Venezuelan? Because after the instability in Venezuela, like a lot of people fled north, there are a lot of undocumented Venezuelans here in America. It's not just like Mexicans or whatever. How the fuck are we getting them back? I don't think Venezuela is going to open its airports to allow like 400, you know, flights a year of refugees and migrants that we're sending back. I wonder if Trump's going to incentivize them somehow. Maybe like promise to lower the sanctions or remove the sanctions? Not sure. They'll send them to Mexico? Well, they can't. Mexico won't accept them. Just dumping migrants in a country like that would be considered an act of war. You know, it would not go over well. They're not undocumented. They're here under protected refugee status. I'm talking about undocumented people, not just people under protected refugee status. But like, you know, to the Trump administration, either or. My friend is a Venezuelan. They are going to deport them to either Ecuador or Colombia because they have visa-free borders with Venezuela. Well, how do you know that? Was that something that your friend said? How would your friend have access to that information? That's a possibility. But then, like, do you think Colombia or Ecuador are going to open up their airports to hundreds of thousands of migrants being dropped off there to then be schlepped back over to Venezuela? I'm telling you, Marco Rubio's job is just going to be to, like, facilitate the geopolitical element of the mass deportation scheme. That's the plan there. Colombia has already accepted 3 million refugees. From us being sent back? No, they haven't. Do you just mean, like, in general from Venezuela? Because those aren't the same things. I don't mean to be splitting hairs, but the Venezuelans and Haitians are here under protected refugee status. They are not undocumented. You're splitting a hair that isn't there. There are objectively undocumented. For one, it's a distinction that doesn't matter to the administration, but there are undocumented Venezuelans here. Like that is a thing. Protected migrancy or protected refugee status is something that you have to like administrate. It doesn't just get granted by default and stay indefinitely. Either way, it doesn't matter because they're all getting roped up. So, man. I don't think it's unimaginable that they could take them to the border, give them a backpack with like a day's worth of food and make them walk and then blame Mexico and they get turned back. It's stupid and cruel enough. That's possible. They might just go for like a radically, you know, like a radically inhumane I don't know. We'll have to see. Doesn't this all start with the camps first? Well, yeah. In the meantime, though, they're probably going to requisition like any existing sites they can. Fucking empty shopping malls or I don't know. I was about to say golf club, you know, golf fields, but probably not those.